When you picture the deadliest weather in America, you picture a tornado. A mile-wide funnel tearing through a subdivision, sirens blaring, debris circling a quarter mile into the sky. That image is so embedded in the national consciousness, the storm chasers, the movies, the flattened neighborhoods on every evening news cycle, that it has convinced an entire country to fear the wrong thing. Over the last 30 years, tornadoes have killed an average of 68 people per year in the United States. In the same period, floods have killed 88. And in bad years, the gap widens sharply. In 2024, flash floods killed 119 people. Tornadoes killed 52. But the statistic that should genuinely change how you think about severe weather isn't the total. It's where those deaths happen. The deadliest place to be during a flood isn't on a boat or in a river or standing on a coastline. It's sitting strapped into the driver's seat of your own car. So what is it about water, something you drink, bathe in, and never think twice about, that makes it quietly, consistently more lethal than the most violent weather phenomenon on Earth? Flash floods aren't rising rivers. A river floods over days, giving communities time to evacuate. A flash flood develops in under an hour, sometimes in minutes, driven by intense rainfall that overwhelms the ground's ability to absorb it. The result isn't water slowly creeping up a wall. It's a kinetic mass of fluid carrying enough energy to roll boulders and carve new channels into bedrock. Over a 50-year period, researchers documented more than 4,500 flood fatalities across the United States. When they broke the data down, one finding dominated. Roughly 63% of those deaths happened inside motor vehicles, and over 86% of all flood victims weren't caught off guard. They drove or walked into the water on purpose. The typical victim is an adult male between 20 and 50, frequently behind the wheel of a truck or SUV. Someone who looked at the water, assessed the crossing, and decided their vehicle could handle it. They're on a road they drive every day. The water looks like an oversized puddle, flat, brown, reflecting the sky. No whitecaps, no roar. They're inside a climate-controlled cabin in a machine that weighs 2 tons, and they've probably crossed this same stretch during smaller storms and nothing happened. What none of them account for is what moving water actually does to anything standing in its way. The first thing most people get wrong about floodwater is the depth they assume is dangerous. 6 inches of fast-moving water, barely above the ankle, roughly the height of a smartphone standing on end, carries enough force to knock a full-grown adult flat. The reason is density. Water is 816 times denser than air. A current flowing at 6 miles per hour, about the pace of a light jog, hits with the same force as wind gusting over 170 miles per hour. That's EF4 tornado territory. Except this doesn't look like a tornado. It looks like a puddle with a slight ripple. And because floodwater is brown and opaque, you can't see whether the road beneath it is intact, whether it drops off into a drainage culvert, or whether the 6 inches you're looking at is actually 3 feet over a washed-out foundation. 7 experienced canyoneers entered Keyhole Canyon in Zion National Park on a clear afternoon in September 2015, the shortest, easiest slot canyon in the park. Shortly before 1 o'clock, Mark McKenzie texted his family a photo. Blue skies, white clouds. Eating lunch, this is my view, he wrote. Between 4:30 and 5:30 that afternoon, a thunderstorm struck the catchment area miles upstream. Acres of impermeable slick rock funneled every drop downhill into a channel barely wide enough to stretch your arms across. The flow rate spiked from 55 cubic feet per second to 2,630, a nearly 50-fold increase, in about 15 minutes. All 7 were killed. The storm that killed them was never overhead. It was never even visible. Water doesn't only kill outdoors. During Hurricane Ida in September of 2021, rain fell over New York City at rates exceeding 3 inches per hour. The city's aging stormwater system collapsed almost instantly, and the runoff poured down into the stairwells and window wells of basement apartments across Queens and Brooklyn. 11 of the 13 people who died in the city that night drowned inside their own homes. Once 3 feet of water accumulates outside a basement door, the hydrostatic pressure against it exceeds 2,000 pounds. Roughly the weight of a Clydesdale horse pressing continuously against the panel. If the door swings outward, it's sealed. In one household, family members tried to reach a relative trapped in a flooding room and could not force the door against the water. The person on the other side drowned while the family stood inches away. The canyons, the basements, the people swept off their feet on an open road. Combined, they account for less than half the annual death toll. The rest traces back to one place, and it's the last one most people would guess. If you want the next one of these to find you, subscribing takes 1 second and means it shows up on its own. The deadliest environment in a flash flood isn't a slot canyon or a sealed basement. It's the inside of a car, and the reason directly contradicts what your brain tells you when you look at your vehicle sitting in the driveway. Your car weighs 3,400 pounds. That feels heavy. That feels planted. But water weighs 62 pounds per cubic foot, and modern vehicles are engineered to be nearly airtight. Precision weather sealing, flush door panels, a sealed cabin designed to hold in air conditioning and block out road noise. On the highway, that engineering is a feature. In water, it transforms your car into a sealed air bubble. When your car enters just 18 inches of floodwater, roughly knee height, the chassis displaces enough water to generate over 3,200 pounds of upward buoyant force. The actual weight holding the tires to the road drops to about 180 pounds. A 2-ton machine, and only 180 pounds of it is still pressing against the pavement. That's the line where everything changes. A current moving at 4 miles per hour, about the speed of a brisk walk, exerts roughly 473 pounds of lateral force against the side of the car. The remaining friction between rubber and asphalt, about 72 pounds. The water wins that equation by a factor of 6. The car slides off the crowned road surface and into the drainage channel beside it. And from inside the cabin, the shift is almost imperceptible. The rough vibration of tires gripping asphalt goes smooth. The steering wheel goes slack. Turning it does nothing, because the front wheels aren't touching anything. The car begins drifting sideways, gently at first, and then the heavy engine block pulls the nose down at an angle that drops your stomach. This is where the heaviest, most capable-looking vehicles betray their drivers most completely. A standard 30-inch truck tire contains nearly 5 cubic feet of trapped air. 4 of those tires alone generate over 1,200 pounds of buoyant lift before the chassis even touches the water. SUVs and four-wheel drive trucks, with their massive undercarriages and oversized wheels, displace far more water than a compact sedan. Researchers at the University of New South Wales ran full-scale submersion tests on a Nissan Patrol, a vehicle weighing 2.5 tons, and found it became critically unstable at just 18 inches and floated entirely at 37. The heaviest vehicle on the road loses its grip at roughly the same depth as the lightest one. That runs counter to every instinct a driver has. But mass isn't what keeps a vehicle on the road in water. Friction is. And friction depends entirely on how much weight is still pressing down on the pavement. Once buoyancy eliminates that downward force, a truck and a sedan are both boats. The truck is just a bigger one. Once the car is floating, the sequence accelerates. The engine block pitches the vehicle nose first into the deeper water. The electrical system shorts, and the power windows, for most drivers, the only realistic escape route, fail within 15 to 60 seconds, roughly the time it takes to send a single text message. As the vehicle sinks, the hydrostatic pressure against the exterior of the doors climbs with every inch of depth. At 2 feet of submersion, the force on a standard car door exceeds 400 pounds. By the time water reaches the bottom of the windows, it's over 2,000 pounds. The door doesn't feel stuck. It feels like it was poured into the frame. The windows are dead, and the cabin fills from the floorboards up. And there is one final detail that closes the trap. In 2017, Federal Safety Standard FMVSS 226 required automakers to install ejection mitigation countermeasures in side windows, designed to prevent occupants from being thrown through the glass during rollovers. To comply, manufacturers widely replaced traditional tempered glass with laminated glass, the same layered, shatter-resistant material used in windshields. In a rollover, laminated glass saves lives. In water, it seals you inside. A 2019 AAA study confirmed that standard spring-loaded window punch tools, the devices sold specifically for underwater escape, fail universally against laminated glass. 1 in 3 new cars on the road today have side windows that cannot be broken from the inside. A federal safety feature designed to protect you in a crash is the exact mechanism that traps you in a flood. Decades of movies have taught one piece of survival advice for exactly this scenario. Stay calm, let the car fill with water, and once the pressure equalizes, the door will open. Dr. Gordon Giesbrecht, who has personally conducted over 150 live vehicle submersion tests at the University of Manitoba, puts it simply, that advice will kill you. By the time the interior pressure equalizes, the car is entirely full of water and every occupant has drowned. The only survivable window is the first 60 seconds, the brief floating period before water reaches the glass. The widest tornado in recorded history, 2.6 miles across, touched down near El Reno, Oklahoma in 2013. Thousands of residents did what instinct demands. They got in their cars and drove. Interstates 35 and 40 gridlocked within minutes, and the same supercell that produced the tornado dumped extreme rainfall across those highways. The concrete trenches of the interstate collected every drop. Water rose around vehicles that couldn't move. 13 people drowned in their cars that day, sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on roads they'd driven 1,000 times. The tornado itself killed 8. The National Weather Service has run the Turn Around, Don't Drown campaign since 2007. The slogan is simple, widely recognized, and largely ignored. The failure isn't informational. Drivers don't enter floodwater because they haven't heard the warning. They enter because their own experience tells them the warning doesn't apply to this particular crossing. They crossed water last month and nothing happened. They crossed it last year. Their brain has a sample size of 12 safe crossings and 0 disasters. So when the water is 14 inches instead of 3, nothing about the way it looks from inside the car tells them everything has changed. 14 inches looks exactly like 3 inches when it's brown and opaque and covering the road. And over 55% of vehicle flood fatalities happen at night, when headlights reflect off the surface and judging depth becomes genuinely impossible. Municipalities can't physically barricade every low-water crossing across an entire county during a storm that materializes in 20 minutes. When barricades do go up, drivers routinely go around them, treating them as precautionary rather than absolute. And roughly 400 times a year, the NWS issues simultaneous tornado and flash flood warnings for the same area, events where the recommended actions directly contradict each other. Get underground for the tornado, get to high ground for the flood. When both arrive at once, people respond to the threat they can see and ignore the one they can't. So if your car ever enters floodwater and you feel the tires lose the road, you have approximately 60 seconds to get out. Not 60 seconds to assess the situation. 60 seconds total. The protocol is 4 steps. Seatbelts off, immediately. Do not pick up your phone. There is no time to call for help, and trying guarantees you won't escape. Windows open. Roll them down before the electrical system shorts, which happens in the first 15 to 60 seconds. If the motor is already dead and your car has tempered side glass, a spring-loaded punch tool on the lower corner of the window is your last option. Never kick the center. Never attempt the windshield. It's laminated by design and will not break. Out through the window, children first. Push them out ahead of you. Do not attempt to open the door. It floods the cabin and accelerates the sinking. Before any of that becomes relevant, check your side windows now. Look for a small label in the bottom corner that reads laminated or AS1. If it's there, a punch tool will not work, and your only way out is rolling the window down in the first 30 seconds before the system dies. But the version of this that actually saves lives is the simplest one. If you can't see the road beneath the water, don't drive into it. 12 inches, the height of a ruler, is all it takes to turn a 2-ton machine into something you can't steer, can't stop, and can't get out of. And nothing about the way the water looks from behind the windshield will ever tell you that.